Welcome to Awaken Human, where we rebirth sovereignty into your true self, bridging together mind, body, and spirit as we experience Earth as a soul in the human body, sharing channeled messages from ascended masters and our awakening journeys, including my own. I'm your host, Maeve. Let the journey continue. Welcome to another day of Awakened Human. It's an honor that you're tuning in today to share your time and listen. Today, we're going to be diving into why I wanted to come start sharing on these platforms bits of my own spiritual awakening, what happens when I channel the Ascended Masters, and how the name Maeve was birthed for me. So, diving right into the purpose of all of this is to share these channeled messages. I know that these messages aren't just for me, and it's an honor to have this gift to support whoever is tuning in and wants to receive any of this wisdom and love and energy transmission from them as well. I know they aren't just meant for me, but they teach me so much too. And so I'm also in this journey along with you while I have this gift I'm receiving from my own awakening too. And so I'm grateful to be in this together. One of the things I want to do is have a way for you all to submit questions. So I'm going to be having a link in my show notes for you to be able to do that, to submit any questions. And while I can't guarantee the questions will be picked, I'm excited to answer and explore any of those that I'm being guided to give a channeling for. Along with these messages, I'll be sharing parts of my own awakening and understanding. So sometimes that might be at the end of a channeled message, something that I'm receiving or absorbing or trying to embody in my own life, and maybe some ways that you might be able to do that as well. And then the other piece that I'm really excited to share on here is to have guests come on to share their own awakening journey and wisdom that they're gaining and understanding. I think it's really important to hear other people's journey of their spiritual awakening because there's so many different ways that people come to this path and their own understanding, and they're so unique, and there's not one way. There's not one way, and that makes it so beautiful. I've seen so many different ways that people come to know that they're a soul in the human body, having a physical experience as a spiritual being, and what it means to them, and then what unravels from all of that for them within that unfolding. And so I think there's a beautiful opportunity for us to hear different people's paths, and it activates us, deeper wisdom within us, deeper knowledge, deeper experiences that we can embody on a just, I keep saying deep, but much deeper level. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited to bring to you all as well. So for my awakening journey, ironically, it started and accelerated from conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories. But before I go into that, I want to share a little bit about what was going on in the year 2020 for me leading into that. So at this point in my journey, I had decided that I was spiritual, and I'll share a little bit more about my involvement in Christianity before going to where I was spiritual. But at this point, I was spiritual. I had read Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back, And it really just gave me more of a layer on how to cultivate what I was already doing within spirituality and in my just day to day on how to start speaking to guides and understanding the nuances of synchronicities within the universe. Also at this time, I started to notice friendships were changing and I wasn't really sure why they were crumbling, and part of this had created this feeling of being lost. I mean, not only because of the friendships, but we were in the pandemic, and things just weren't adding up to me anymore. I was in the world and trying to zoom out, and I didn't quite know where to anchor that. And of course, as we understand what more of was happening during this time, it helped propel me into my own awakening. So for me, I usually look at the big picture, and I was struggling to understand that big picture at the time, which now makes sense because I was missing this other piece that was going to be launching my awakening. Ultimately, this time though, when friendships were changing, as I did move into my spiritual awakening, it did allow me to learn how to be my best friend, to be with myself, to know myself. And even when I'm with other people, knowing that I'm also with me too, and not discounting that. And this is where we can really fill ourselves up with love. So I just thought that was an important side note to include. So during this time, I had gone to the Smoky Mountains and wanted to go on my first solo hike in nature. And when I came back, I realized that I needed to go live in nature. I could just feel the trees saying hello and welcoming me and greeting me into the land and being one with those nature spirits and the trees, just filling me up with such a sense of peace that I knew that I needed for that to be my weekend, my day to day. And little did I know that that would turn into so much more. But after having this feeling, I went to one of my friends who does card readings. And she's somebody that I would go to for card readings every year. We would do the themes of the year. And sometimes I would do one on and off throughout the year. And most of the time, everything would be fairly accurate, just maybe a little bit of shifts and nuances, or something might not quite evolve in that way, which energy shifts. So makes sense. In this particular card reading, I had asked what would happen, what would be the energy of moving. And within that, she had said there was going to be 2 moves in 18 months, which did happen. I had moved 6 months or a few months later because I had a roommate that was moving out of state. And so I moved into a condo. And then I think from 14 months from there, I moved to Washington. So both of those came true. And then she also told me that I was going to discover something that would change me in all of my relationships in a really big way. So at that time, me and my family had been looking into the conspiracy theories. And I remember we were sitting at a kitchen table one night and just diving into all of these things, and all of us just bouncing off of each other into this. What is this? What's going on here in this planet? Us all diving into these conspiracy theories led me into this woman's TikTok account, and I can't remember what her name is right now. I think it's like Kelsey or something like that. Um, she started talking about 5D, the 5D consciousness, and I think she mentioned just some brief bits on that. I was like, whoa, what's this? I got this like full body chills, and So I started Googling it and came across this article on Medium, and it explained about all of the planes and dimensions, and I think it was like, the physical, emotional, mental, astral plane. And I was like, whoa. It had been exactly what I was looking for, exactly what I had been searching for up until that point, to know that I'm a soul in this body having a physical experience as a spiritual being. And I just felt on cloud nine, like I had figured out everything. It was the key to all of what I was wanting to understand about this universe. As I open this up, I'm just feeling elated. My sister actually had her wedding 2 days later. And I remember just thinking I had the whole universe figured out. Little did I know that I would then be going through all of the shedding that needed to happen and really understanding the depths of everything happening for me, having the 219 ego deaths or whatever whatever number it is now that I'm on. But this woke me up into moving the spark of my awakening journey. But before I get into the continuation of that, I want to back up a little bit and touch on what led up to some of that for me. So I've been a therapist for 10 years now, specializing in autism, ADHD, perfectionism, anxiety, and of course, trauma comes in there from time to time because everybody has trauma, and really trying to help people unpack that and understand themselves. And when I say trauma, I mean anything that's overwhelmingly distressful that our nervous system isn't able to process, and then it gets stuck within our body, because really feelings are energy in motion, and when that energy is not able to be alchemized and released, then it gets stuck and typically creates a subconscious programming, which I'll go more into this in another episode. Being a therapist up until that point had pushed to start dissolving my own limiting beliefs and realizing my thoughts. It forced me also to be mindful, because I'm with another human one on one and sharing my presence with them. And that really moved me into knowing how to hold space and noticing if my own thoughts were going this way or that way, and bringing myself back to center to really just be a vessel of listening. Leading up to being a therapist, I had started my own therapy when I was in my early 20s. My first ther- therapist, and or what led to my first therapy appointment, I couldn't sleep for 48 hours. I think I'd slept maybe 2 of those hours. I'd taken NyQuil, Benadryl, any kind of sleep aid to try and make myself go to sleep, but my body was just wired with anxiety. And my nervous system was just on overload from school and trying to be perfect. And so I remember when I went to my therapist, she diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder. And because I would have these constant excessive worries. So we really worked on paying attention to my thoughts, what they were telling me. I used to believe that you couldn't argue in a relationship, or you didn't have the relationship wouldn't work. And I also thought you had to have the perfect snacks in the perfect place at a party, or people wouldn't like me. My mind just made up these stories and illusions that I was running with and believing. And so throughout grad school and things of that sort, you're just breaking down these aspects of yourself and bringing your attention to it. So going into the awakening journey, I had unpacked quite a bit, but still there was more to do, and still unraveling, coming into knowing myself as love. A year before I had my awakening, I had started EMDR as well. And if you're not familiar with this tool, it's called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And what it does is it takes a traumatic event or a disturbing belief, when I say disturbing, like a distorted belief, and changes the way that your body stores it. So it's very somatic. And I was releasing all of this past beliefs and situations where I took on these feelings of insecurity. And this modality shifted me from having an anxious, what we deem an anxious attachment, to a secure. I'll share a piece of a really powerful moment for me in a little bit, but that was a crucial part for me to let go of these feelings that were stored in my body. And I'm so grateful for that therapist and the support that she held me in. So once I awakened, with everything else that I had unraveled, it opened me up to the next layer of understanding that everything had genuinely happened for me. All of the challenges were the universe loving me and allowing me the opportunity to evolve. All of the challenges were given are to alchemize something, whether in this life or another life. And I now see that so clearly. And anything that comes up now, I'm looking at what's the deeper layer? What am I creating? Where is this coming from? What's the opportunity and how this is serving me? Before I go into what happened once I had that spark of awakening, I'd like to touch on what happened for me to go into spirituality from Christianity. I grew up in a Christian family and was in and out of the church until about 25. My parents never put a lot of pressure on me to show up in a indoctrined way, and really gave me freedom to explore what resonated with me. Although most of my extended family had been regularly practicing and being in the Christian religion. One of the things that kept drawing me back to explore Christianity is I would feel the divine presence and spirit. And so I wasn't quite sure how to understand that, when I would also feel this uncertainty about mixed messages around unconditional love with what I was observing. And now I kind of see that that was more of just my nudge to feel the presence of creator, source, and this divine love that flows through all of existence. But with the mixed messages in Christianity, I just knew and could never settle on feeling secure in the practice and the religion. And while I do believe that everyone has their path for the reason that they do, and that there is no right or wrong on whether somebody is following the Christian religion, I just knew for me that it didn't always add up. I had a or I still have, I have a grandfather who's gay and had a partner who's now transitioned for 30 years. It never added up to me, nor could I accept that marriage had to be between a man and a woman, and that their relationship was sin or wrong. That to me, I saw this beautiful love, and the relationship that I was building with God that didn't add up. That didn't make sense. And there was seeds of doubt that were planted in and out of my journey in the Christian religion, with mixed messages that I would hear about what it meant to go to hell, and then seeing judgment happening within the church, and dismissing certain people or not accepting unless you were a certain way did not feel like love to me. And while I know that that's a part of the belief system, I just couldn't say yes to that. Once grad school started, I had these interactions and experiences that made me start to wonder a little bit more about these beliefs, and questioning what really fits for how I understand and my truth. When I was in multicultural counseling in grad school, we had to learn about all the different religions. And as I'm exploring these, I'm seeing that they're saying the same thing, but a different way. And when I noticed this, it made me wonder, are we spending more time pointing the finger at each other than listening and getting curious because we've been told this one is wrong, and not actually taking the time to understand why we're saying that. And then I dated an Egyptian man, and he was showing me the interpretation that they have of Jesus. And it was very similar in a lot of ways, just not quite the perception or view of the Christian religion, which that also is what continues the differences in saying that one is not acceptable, another one does work, and both towards each other. When I saw the interpretation, it showed me what I was being told the other religion believed wasn't actually exactly true. And also at this time, I was in a church group. I'd gone back to church in grad school this time, and trying to explore again. This church had a policy of no perfect people allowed. And that felt like an opening, a potential of a different version of like what sin is considered. There was discussions with more of the inconsistencies that kept making me question and eventually led me to disconnect. And so at this point, I just decided that I'm spiritual. I'm spiritual, and I know God to be this loving energy, this loving presence. And so I looked into trying to figure out what does this new version of me mean? And it's interesting looking back on this time because I had looked for spiritual practices or places to explore, but I couldn't quite find anything. And so it's also divine timing that I was intended at that time when I did have the awakening for that information to come to me. Because to be honest, the things that I was looking at the time looked quite cultish, and that scared me in its own other way. So I just prayed, and a friend had also sent me an article from Carl Jung about synchronicities at this time. And so I learned how to pay attention in that way, being at the right place at the right time, noticing this loving energy that would create this powerful momentum for you to connect with people. Staying in this curiosity, being open, led me, though, to that awakening moment. Once I had the awakening, I think there are several experiences that are important for me to share that led into channeling. The first year, once the awakening started, I dived into reading all these books, and each book felt like an activation of re remembering, allowing this wisdom to come back through that I've already known before. So each time I was reading something, it would just spark a knowing in my body. whether it was Joe Dispenza, Dolores Canyon, Michael Newton, Eckhart Tolle, or Deepak Chopra, Michael Singer. Reading each one of those, or any of the spiritual books that I would read, felt like this activation within me of a deeper knowing and remembering. And during that first year, I would get glimpses of spiritual gifts happening, whether it was like these divine downloads and nudges, and you would have all the angel numbers appearing over and over and giving confirmations. I was in the flow of connecting all these dots that I had been missing for me and unraveling more of what felt like truth for me. And within that, of course, was the continual shedding of these pieces that have continued to be happening as it allows me to come into more of my light and beingness as love, and being in that state within my body more and more as I let go of beliefs and things that don't serve me. As I'm continuing to read and absorb, letting go of these beliefs, I would have these experiences that would make me have a little more nudges, more curiosity going into that next year, having these energies of bliss and ecstasy happen in conscious touch. And I had no idea that my body could even hold that kind of vibration or frequency. I was also receiving Reiki energy healings at the time. And now I know that my Reiki healer was also doing so much more, but sparked, she had further activated Kundalini energy in my body. This was probably my third session with her. She had me turn over onto my stomach, and usually I'm on my back. And she barely lightly pressed on the base of my spine, and this energy just shot through my whole spine. And I just sobbed, like snotty crying for the next 20 minutes, just releasing all this energy and purging it out of the body. And she continued to support me as well as a piece of my shedding throughout this process. The next major activation that I had was reading The Law of One. And in this, they talk about the connection to the Venusians. And as I'm reading this, I'm just feeling this whole chills and confirmation, lots of a deeper knowing again, knowing this knowingness within my body. And at the time, I was following this woman on Instagram who I saw was going to be talking in Mount Shasta, and I'd been wanting to go to Mount Shasta because it's the root chakra of the earth, and I didn't know the other aspects of Mount Shasta until I got there. But when I saw that she was speaking at this conference, it was a Venusian conference, and I just knew that I had to go. So this was my first Starseed conference, and I didn't know about the Telosians and the inner city until I got there, which that was a whole other activation for me in remembrance, because when I was getting ready to leave the conference that weekend, I started crying for about an hour prior, trying to get ready to leave. And I was going to head to the mountain first. So I'm just having this sadness of feeling like I'm about to leave my family. When I get up to the mountain that day, I hear that I'm going to need to come back because I have more work to do, and that they were really grateful that I was there. and excited to connect with me that day. I now know that that was a Telosian friend and a teacher, as I've since have connected that my first incarnation as a human was a Lemurian. But when I left that day, I ended up crying for the next 2 hours, going home, just feeling like I left my family. The thing that I was really grateful for, though, with going to this conference is I was reintroduced to the Stargate Experience. I initially had come across these meditations a couple of months after my awakening, but I went down a rabbit hole and had put them aside as I went into exploring other places. But I remember when I had done these meditations, I had felt this really strong energy. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Stargate, the Stargate is channeled meditations from Julianne and Brigitte, who channel Alcazar, who's a spokesperson for a group of Universal Masters. These Universal Masters bring in Ascended Masters and other galactic families to help dissolve beliefs, bring in divine frequencies, or really allow us to see more of our divinity in the different ways that we need, and through different activations as well, and cleansing the cells too through a Stargate, which is the structure behind me that brings in higher dimensional consciousness once it's activated. This sacred geometry structure allows to anchor these energies in that Alcazar is bringing to us. I know the Stargate is what ended up opening channeling for me. Before I get into that, I want to share a little bit more of what was going on last year that also amplified the ability for the channeling to open up. At the start of 2023, I was still doing EMDR sessions, and we started working on a belief that I had that I stress people out. This had come from having parents who had me when they were young, and they're 19, about to be 20. And so naturally, I stressed them out. But I took on this belief about myself that I was difficult and stressed people out. So for this belief, we went into the womb. And when we started doing the bilateral stimulation, which in the EMDR process, you do bilateral stimulation. And for me, I was doing tapping. So when I started tapping, I'm taken to right before I incarnate. I can't see anything, but it's this deep knowing. And I start to feel my soul in my body. And during this, I'm looking at my hands, looking at my therapist, because I can just feel this powerful energy around my whole body, in my body, really. And so as I'm having this experience before I incarnate, I'm telling myself, okay, I'm ready. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Let's do this. Which to me is kind of ironic because I was born at 123. And so that added just another confirmation for me, or a good opportunity to chuckle too, of that connection. And so then I'm sitting in my mom's womb, absorbing all of her DNA, all the stress, but knowing that doing this was going to propel me to wake up. Propel me to wake up. So when that started happening, my therapist asks me eventually, as I'm continuing to have this feeling of my whole soul being in my body, if there was anything I wanted to tell my inner child. or my mom, my mind initially went to, don't stress, don't stress so much. But then I was taken over with this, no, thank you. Thank you for being exactly what my soul needed, all the things that were going to help me to be more into my light. And I love you and all the things that you've been through to be the perfect formula to support me. And in EMDR, once you process through all the distressing feelings that you have in your body, you integrate a positive affirmation. And the one that came through for me was, I am the light within. And so as I tap and am integrating this into my system, it turned into I am, I am, I am. And that was the first time I felt a deep resonance of my I am presence. And that feeling lasted for a few weeks of me being in this just complete embodiment until I had a skiing accident where I tore my ACL. But through that accident, I had to learn how to receive in a totally different way. I live on the third floor and I have two dogs. I couldn't walk them. I needed help doing things around the house. And the help that I received allowed me to move in this deeper receptivity than I had before, which turned into deeper receiving of my own love for myself, receiving compliments, receiving love from others as well. And this receptivity is important to be into the divine feminine part of yourself, which channeling requires for you to be receiving. This set up the perfect formula for when I went to go do a meditation on Lionsgate portal with Julianne from Stargate and Michelle Castro, who channels Isis. During this meditation, Isis gave us the opportunity to activate our gifts. And Julianne brought in this essence of life energy, which is direct source energy, which also has the power to activate your channeling gifts. And so I left the meditation and just feeling in these divine energies. Nothing hit me at that moment. The next morning, I had sat down to do my meditation as I normally have, with opening the field and calling in the ascended masters. And I had been doing that in that way because through working with the Stargate, I had noticed when they would bring in the masters that I would feel a shift in the energy with each one, but I didn't know how to decipher or discern it for myself. So I wanted to learn and teach myself how to do that on my own. So I had been exploring meditating this way so that I could attune to these different energies that were coming in that I would feel. But this time, when I sat down to do that, they told me who was coming in. And then this beautiful information just poured and poured and poured in for the next, I think it was about 30 minutes of sharing about the quantum field. And I realize now that all of the year prior, when I was bringing them in, that they were tuning me to their vibration. So between the meditation on the Lionsgate portal and doing that, I had become in harmony and resonance to receive. So after this happens, I'm like, whoa, I think I just channeled. And in shock. So the next day, I came prepared to take notes just in case it happened again. And it did. And it continued to happen. And it's been this evolving of figuring out how to do this. I think I started with trying to just say the words out loud on a voice recorder, and then I moved to doing voice to text, and I tried to type, but then the words would end up looking like I was doing coding, and I would miss the buttons, and because I'm having my eyes closed and trying to stay in the flow, and so that didn't work. So it was a lot of back and forth of trying to figure out some of these messages, and or how to bring it through these messages, until I went to the Essence of Life training with Julianne and Michelle, and it was suggested to use their accent. So now when I do this, I get in the accent because it helps to stay in their vibration. When these masters come in, it feels like each one of them drops down their consciousness or their energy, their frequency presence. And once everybody's there who's going to be coming for whatever particular message they're giving, it feels like it morphs into this orchestra of their energies to receive this information. And I've learned as well that there's also an ascended master realm, which is kind of like a library for all of these consciousnesses. So sometimes they present themselves to me individually, and sometimes it's more of just this realm. So the masters that typically come in are Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Buddha, Kuan Yin, Isis, Saint Germain, Osho. I think those are the main homies, as I'd like to call them. And then sometimes there's these other galactic families too that will present themselves. And it's been quite a range. And sometimes that also, I've noticed, depends on who I'm channeling for. If they have a particular connection to a lineage, then those star families may come through for them. And channeling was a whole other activation and letting go, because it brought up a lot of fears of stepping in to this space and claiming that this is what's happening to me. People thinking I'm strange or I'm weird, and allowing myself to embrace this and trust. Because I've tested this in all sorts of ways, even trying to sit down and pretend, or sit down and make up the accent, and nothing comes through. And part of it even helped me to trust was knowing, for when I talk, I might say and so, have filler words, but when I'm connected to them, I'm in this divine flow, but also just feel this loving presence. And so I feel so humble and grateful that I have this gift to be able to share with humanity and anyone that comes to connect through me, because I also hope this is an activation for you to also see your divinity and the love that you are, as I continue to feel that in myself as well. We're in this journey together. And so I hope when I'm sharing these messages that they can guide you into your own spaces of remembering, as they do for me as well. And so I'm really grateful for whatever we're both able to receive in sharing these, and open to whatever possibilities awaken within all of us. And the other piece is how Maeve came about for me. In 2022, I was going to start a podcast, and during that, I was called to use an alias for my last name. When I was looking for aliases, Maeve really stuck out to me. I think I was Googling spiritual names. And when I looked at Maeve, I saw that she was the goddess of sovereignty. And she was the goddess of lots of different things that I don't know if I want to take on those embodiment archetypes. The sovereignty piece stuck out for me, though, because one of my life's work is the 55th gene key. And if those of you who aren't familiar with the gene keys, it's Richard Rudd's work on the kind of expansion of the I Ching, and it includes human design and astrology. But I love these because they show us the shadow aspects of ourselves and gifts, and then the city state is what he refers to it, which is kind of what I would call our enlightened gifts. And the 55th gene key is something that we're moving into as a collective. And it's moving out of the victim into freedom. The victim of these things are happening to me versus for me. And freedom from the mind, freedom from the stories, from the ego, from the things we identify with. And this moving out of this victim has been my biggest lesson and allows me to continue to be in more freedom and feel more of my true self, more of my power. And when I went to the Essence of Life training, Alcazar had suggested for me to use an alias for when I started to launch channeling. So Maeve was officially birthed after some more processes of shedding this year, where it felt like it's time for me to step into this. And I'm just truly grateful for any of you that are feeling called to tune into these messages, for, like I said, for us to both receive together. And in general, this is just truly such a gift to be a part of humanity at this time. So may we all open to the freedom that's within, the love that we are, and get to enjoy the ride of this experience together. So I thank you for tuning in to my story and look forward to continue sharing. I love you, and we're all in this together. Thank you for tuning in to Awaken Human. I hope this empowered you on your spiritual awakening and knowing thyself. The key to awakening lies within each of us, and by embracing our authentic selves, we create a brighter, more compassionate world. If you like this episode, share your story and tag me. Don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and leave a review or comment. Until next time, may you continue to awaken to the infinite possibilities within.